Considering I love the Crash Bandicoot series, and since I played Nitro Kart, both PS2 and GBA, and the Insane Trilogy, I wanted to play more of this series, and in the end, one of the games is Crash Bandicoot 2 Entranced. This game is pretty much if you slap Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3 into one game, and have the platforming segments, the gameplay of a previous GBA game, Crash Bandicoot The Huge Adventure, but more responsive, and put it on the GBA, it's that good. Some people would usually think that the Game Boy Advance versions of the Crash Bandicoot games haven't aged well or just plain suck. But this game is definitely one of the best Crash games on the GBA in my honest opinion. In Entrance, Entropy and a new villain called Entrance are the main antagonists of the game and have kidnapped and brainwashed the rest of the Bandicoots, Coco, Crunch, and Fake Crash. And the levels are mostly inspired by Crash Bandicoot Warped and may somehow work on the GBA. Have you ever wanted to play the Arabian levels from Crash Bandicoot Warped in 2D? Not like those 2D sections, but entire Arabian levels in 2D? Now you can! Take those tedious jet boating levels from Warped and somehow make them so much better in Entrance and actually use it for a chase sequence? Sure, the hitbox is strange in these kinds of levels, but at the very least, they're fun. And have those awesome Atmosphere levels from Wrath of Cortex and make them still so much fun. Also, the level select structure is my favorite level select in the entire Crash series, and the music for this game is freaking golden, as well as its library being one of the best OSTs you'll ever hear on the Game Boy Advance. And what you're listening to right now is one of, if not the best Warp Room theme in the entire series. I could go on and on about how this is a great GBA Crash game, but considering there are only 28 games left, I need to continue on. I can't say that I've been a fan of the Walking Dead series. I don't hate it, it's just not my thing. Though, truth be told, I am starting to become a fan of it. But even when I wasn't a fan, I do love Telltale games, so I decided I'll play a Walking Dead game. But I haven't played the game of Leon. Oh no, I was referring to with Walking Dead A New Frontier, aka Season 3 of Telltale's Walking Dead series. Look, I know Season 3 is not well received by the fans of the Telltale Walking Dead series, but hey, no opinions can be all the same. Truthfully, I don't own it, my oldest nephew did, and considering that he only had the first chapter, and since that this is a Telltale game, a point-and-click game of what you could say to others, I won't be saying much about the gameplay, but I will talk about the plot of this game. As stated previously, A New Frontier is the third season of the Telltale Walking Dead series, and takes place a few years after Season 2, seeing how Clementine has grown much more, and using the skills that Lee, Kenny, and Jane taught her, becoming a walker-slaying badass. We get this new character called Javier Garcia, who tries to get home in time and discovers his father had died, and his brother David started beating him to the ground for not being there. When he met Clementine, they didn't have a very graceful meeting, but after running and hiding from walkers, aka Muertos, though many people throughout the series call them different things, the story advances in a little town called Prescott, the one place where people can feel safe. At least it was, until members of A New Frontier decided to come and screw it all up. Javier got separated from his niece, nephew, and sister-in-law that he has a crush on, and when we found them, unfortunately they got founded by The New Frontier and shot Javier's niece, Mariana, down, and injured Kate in the process, and the rest is history until episode 2. As I've said, I've only played through one episode thus far, and the gameplay is still your typical choice of what your character wants to say. And it's amazing to see a great series such as Telltale's Walking Dead. Season 3 definitely has one of the better stories out of the 4 seasons, as instead of just about a group of survivors, it's a group about the remaining survived family members, and everyone in the family goes through tragic moments throughout the story, with members of the family dying throughout the game, with Clementine acting as a side character just like she was in the first season. And to be honest, I much prefer her in A New Frontier, with seasons 1 and 4 tied for second place. In fact, speaking of The New Frontier, a gang of bad guys, well, some, as it turns out, but Clementine is actually a member of The New Frontier, with the leader of the gang being Gabriel's father, David. Ooh, double plot twist in less than 45 minutes. Give Telltale the Nobel Prize for the most underrated twist of 2016. Also, Gabe and Clem are some of the best couples in any Telltale game and definitely better than Clementine romancing Lewis or Violet in the final season of the series. But still, while New Frontier is definitely one of the weaker seasons, if not the worst, but you know what? The hate is unjustified. At the very least, I still recommend playing it even for those dedicated Walking Dead fans.
Muertos.
What do you call them?
Walkers.
What do you call the ones that run?
They're all f***ing walkers, okay?
Oh, Shrek. Shrek, Shrek, Shrek. I may have hated your movies at first, but now they're all awesome, and I love ya. Except for Shrek Preferred. Get that movie out of here. But no matter what, you may be controversial when it comes to your games, but it ain't true with your best game, Shrek 2. This is the last game on this list that my dad and brother had, but they let me keep it along with the previously mentioned Cars. This game is so awesome and reminds me why I love Shrek 2. The story may be in the same direction and plot as the movie, but implements different features so that it's not exactly like the movie. The levels and music are stunning for PS2, Xbox, and GameCube, and each of the playable characters are great. Shrek can lift up items and sleeping enemies, Fiona has the ability to slow down time, Donkey keeps. Gingy can distract enemies with his cookies kinda like a quarter. Or a penny. Or a dime. Or a nickel. Okay, you see where I'm going with this. Little Red can throw explosive apples, Puss in Boots can tightrope, Big Bad Wolf can huff, and he'll puff, and he'll blow all the enemies into oblivion. Tinkerbell can use pixie dust to cause the characters to fly, and Humrek and Dunkhorse can charge! Ha ha ha! I'm sorry. In terms of presentation, Shrek 2 is gorgeous looking for a game made in 2004, and I love the brightness and resolution for this game. It's almost like it's in 480p or 540p, and despite those resolutions being not that good, they're still great. And the voices for this game are spectacular. Having the characters' voice actors such as Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, and Cameron Diaz voicing their movie counterparts. Instead of ripping lines from a movie, the actors come and direct their own lines for the games, which is what some licensed games don't do. I'm looking squarely at you, 60% of Arendelle and Kingdom of Corona from Kingdom Hearts 3. However, if I have to bring up one flaw the game has, is that the music is unmemorable. It's not bad per se, I just can't remember a single track even though the music is good. But other than that, Shrek 2 is a fantastic license game, and thank you Dad, it's one of my favorite license games of all time.
Relax, the Wicked Witch's place is that way.
Excuse me, wicked witches, spooky trees, crazy mice on a lactose binge, we are doomed!
Shut it, donkey.
I told you before that I like Crash Bandicoot Purple, and I know I shouldn't, but it is a guilty pleasure. The introduction was a bit more interesting than Spiral Orange and mashed just a bit. The hub world is far more impressive and the mini games are surprisingly fun. Not because they're good, I just personally enjoy them. There's not really anything else I can say about this game other than it's my favorite Crash game on the GBA, even though I played it on an emulator. Fun fact, Carmageddon was originally supposed to be my first Let's Play on this channel. Mostly because I didn't have a capture card or any of the sorts, which I can now do Let's Plays without one, thank God. But Carmageddon is a fantastic game. Why is this game called Carmageddon? It's a racing game where you can run over civilians, and if you take too much damage to your car, you immediately lose because you can't move your vehicle after sustaining too much damage. It's also the darkest racing game I've played, and it quite possibly is one of the most controversial, if not the most controversial game of 1997. Seriously, racing games are supposed to be fun and kid-friendly. Why does madness like this even exist? This game was so successful that it spawned into a series, for better or for worse. But the success of this game pleased many fans. I may not be the biggest Carmageddon fan on the planet, but this is still a good game nonetheless.
Yeah!
From one controversial game of its time to another controversial game of its time. I already talked about Doom 64 on how it was disappointing to me, but I thought it was an alright game. The first Doom game is far more impressive in every way possible because sweet holy Minotaur things, this game is awesome. And no, I'm not talking about the Doom 2016 reboot because I haven't played it yet, but the 1993 Doom is still great. Or at least it was until the 2016 reboot came along. Yeah, while the original hasn't aged well, there are a lot of things in this game that I like. Such as in the bottom, you see Doom Guy's face at the bottom telling you how he feels after sustaining so much damage. You can see his facial expressions change from determined from almost dying. But Doom is controversial for one thing, and one thing only: the necessity of the blood and gore implemented in this game. Since Doom is a 2.5D first-person shooter, it tries to be as realistic as it can. Much like with its inspired FPS Wolfenstein 3D, Doom tries to be exactly like that, so when you kill monsters, the gore appears after killing some enemies. And it's been the main staple feature in every game in the franchise. With the music, technically there's only one I listen to sometimes, and that is At Doom's Gate, which has been playing this entire entry. So, while Doom hasn't aged well and is getting completely overshadowed by its reboot counterpart 23 years later, Doom still remains one of the most influential, yet controversial, games of all time.
Okay, here, take me home.
Aside from RPGs, there was one other genre I got much more interested in last year: fighting games. Sure, I played a lot of Smash and Mortal Kombat, but that was honestly really it. I like the genre, but just not as much. Some more I'll get to later, but for now, let's talk about a game called Skullgirls. Skullgirls is one of the other games I had on my phone, and it wasn't on my Samsung Galaxy S5. Nope! Skullgirls is a fighting game where there's mostly girls. But the title is also about an artifact where if someone finds it, they get possessed by it. Jeez, what could one maiden have with so much power, huh? In a way, Skullgirls is just your typical fighting game with a fantastic lineup of characters and incredible music that fits into the scenario and scenery of Chicago quite well. If I had to make a countdown of my favorite fighting games, which I will possibly get into, Skullgirls would definitely be on the list. Oh yeah, and my favorite character in the game is Philia because 1, she's huge waifu material, what's not to love? And 2, I love her gameplay style. In terms of presentation, going for an indie look, which is pretty much what Skullgirls is, I honestly think that the cartoony graphical design suits the situation of the game excellently, story-wise, musically, and everything else. I haven't played much of Skullgirls, mostly because for some reason I need the internet for it, but if I did play more, Skullgirls would have been a little bit higher on my list. But for now, Skullgirls is at number 23. So, the Mega Man games. They were fun, but I wish Capcom could have added some homing touches to it. Oh wait, Mega Man X exists for a reason. As much as I like the original Mega Man X took everything that made the original game so fun and made it even better. The story to X is somehow more addicting than the original games, because X was created to bring pace to the world, but however, he was still a rookie and didn't have much experience until the coolest best friend anyone could ever have, Zero, saves X from almost getting destroyed by Vile, one of Sigma's main lackeys. So we, as X, go around destroying a bunch of Mavericks, not Robot Masters, Mavericks, until we collect their powers and gain new abilities until we go to Sigma's fortress and defeat both Sigma and Vile once and for all. One aspect I love about the X series more than anything in Mega Man history is wall jumping. Wall jumping in the games helps you traverse through the levels a lot easier than the original games do, and adds obstacles that you have to use the wall jumping aspect. In terms of the obstacles, they are a lot more kinder than the original games, because they aren't frustrating most of the time but still provide challenge, such as the electrical glass pipes and Spark Mandrill stage, the underwater dragon mini-boss from Launch Octopus's stage, and so much more. The 16-bit graphics on the NES were already great, but comes to the Mega Man X Legacy Collection and they look even better. Oh yeah, I got the first 4 Mega Man X games on Switch. The Mavericks themselves in this game are the best boss lineups such as Flame Mammoth, Chill Penguin, Launch Octopus, and Spark Mandrill. But my favorite boss in this game is the final encounter with Vile, with Zero's first death out of multiple. Rest in peace, Zero. The hidden abilities you can find in each of the 8 stages are amazing. And did you know that you can unlock Hadouken and Shoryuken, Ryu signature moves from the Street Fighter series? One of Capcom's most successful franchises? And Shoryuken is Mega Man's up tilt in Smash 4 and Ultimate? I wish I was making that up. Hadouken and Shoryuken are actually in the game, but I haven't unlocked them yet. Look, the point is, I may not like Mega Man X as much as everyone else, but it was the game that made me a big fan of the Mega Man series, and I cannot thank this game enough for getting me into it. I love you, Mega Man. The Final Fantasy series is definitely the best game series I love this year. I got the remasters of Final Fantasy VIII in Christmas of 2019, and it's another one of those guilty pleasures because the more I play it, the more it interests me. If you guys know me well, Final Fantasy XIII was a game I used to completely despise, but after deciding to give it a second try, it became my favorite game in the series and one of my 5 favorite games of all time. And it's the only Final Fantasy game that I reached the final boss room. Until the PS3 hard disk drive screwed me over. Good thing I got back out there and beat the second Bartanless battle as well as completing the whole game with not much problems. Can't wait to try out the sequels. But one Final Fantasy game I started playing this year was Final Fantasy VII. And while it's my least favorite of all the Final Fantasy games I played thus far, it's an incredible game despite being disappointing. VII to me has one of the best and most immersive stories in the Final Fantasy series, and we all know how rarely Final Fantasy handles its storylines. The story is about a swordsman called Cloud Strife who joins Soldier and Shamrock protesters Avalanche after seeing what Cloud's hero Sephiroth did to his hometown and a best friend's death. To be fair, Cloud himself is one of my favorite characters in the Final Fantasy series, because he's been going through so much, such as getting nightmarish visions about the past and even losing a few people he cared about a whole lot. Other characters such as Tifa, Barrett, and you know what, most longtime viewers already know my love for the cast in Final Fantasy VII, so I shouldn't just keep on going repeat about it. What I should talk about, however, is the gameplay. Much like with every other Final Fantasy game before, you go into an overworld and encounter enemies. This has been exceptionally well done in Final Fantasy IV and VI, even though I haven't played them yet. Considering that Final Fantasy VII is the first ever 3D Final Fantasy game, despite not aging that well, you gotta admit that the overworld looks absolutely gorgeous, and it looks even more gorgeous on later systems. The battle system is the same as every other Final Fantasy game, so I won't go too much into it, but in the end, even though this is one of the most disappointing games I've ever played, Final Fantasy VII is still a great game, and is definitely the best Final Fantasy game I played this year.